By whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding. We, thine unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that, we having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interest, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the Queen, the public weal, peace, and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of all the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Morning, this meeting of the Honorable Senate for Friday, December 17th, 2021 is called to order. I don't usually indicate absences, but Senator Sinclair is absent today because he's in the process of calling his daughter to the bar. So he remained in Montego Bay to participate in the ceremony, which is conducted virtually. So I'm sure you will allow me to convey the congratulations of the Senate to Mrs. Sinclair, who is no doubt responsible significantly for the success of their daughter. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate today are the following: National Housing Trust Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements for the financial year April 1, 2020 to March 31, 2021. Ministry Paper Number 100 of 2021 entitled Annual Report on Audited Financial Statements of the Banana Board for the year ended December 31, 2019. And the accompanying annual report. Ministry Paper Number 101 of 2021 entitled Statistical Institute of Jamaica, PIOJ Annual Report for the financial years ended March 31, 2017, March 31, 2018, and March 31, 2019, and the accompanying reports. Water Resources Authority Annual Report for the financial year 2019-2020. Report of the Special Select Committee to consider and report on private bills and examination of the private bill shortly entitled The Sisters of Mercy of Jamaica, British West Indies Validation, Indemnification and Amendment Act 2021. The law reform zones of special operations, special security and community development measures, and the resolutions in respect of the Augustown Zone Extension of Period of Operation number 6, Order 2021, the Greenwich Town Zone Extension of Period of Operation number 6, Order 2021, the Denham Town Community Zone Extension of Period of Operation number 6, Order 2021, the Mount Salem Community Environs in the Parish of St. James Zone Extension of Period of Operation number 6, Order 2021, and the Norwood Community in the Parish of St. James Extension of Period of Operation number 3, Order 2021, respectively. Ministry paper numbers 103, 104, 105, 106, and 107, respectively, entitled The Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures, Social Intervention 2021, with respect to the Denham Town Community Zone, the Greenwich Town Zone, the Augustown Community Zone, the Mount Salem Community Zone, and the Norwood Community Zone, respectively.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Bills brought from the Honourable House of Representatives.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives to the Honourable Senate. I have the honour to advise the Honourable Senate that on the 14th day of December 2021, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Corrections Act was passed in the House of Representatives. Signed, Marisa Dalimpe Philibert C., the MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Petitions? I'm sorry.
Mr. President, I signify my willingness to take charge of the bill.
A bill shortly entitled the Corrections Amendment Act 2021, read a first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of a second reading of the bill. Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the second reading of the bill and to take it through all its concluding stages.
Thank you, Senator Minister Samuda. Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to...
Mr. President, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the Senate I will move, be it resolved with reference to the resolutions approved by this Honourable Senate on the 10th day of December 2021, appointing 2 select committees, the first to sit jointly with a similar committee appointed by the House of Representatives to conduct a review of the Protected Disclosures Act 2011, and the second to sit jointly with a similar committee appointed by the House of Representatives to conduct a review of the Integrity Commission Act 2017, that the committees be allowed to hold virtual meetings, be they wholly virtual or partly virtual and partly physical, utilizing available information and communications technologies in the manner more specifically outlined below, preserving the rights, powers, and privileges, including voting rights normally accorded to a member of a committee. The committees are empowered to 1, convene and hold meetings in virtual spaces created using information and communication technologies, which shall be considered committee meetings for the purpose of the mandate of either committee. 2, to allow access and participation from remote locations as are enabled by means of information and virtual technologies by members and other persons authorized by the committees. 3, to include members accessing and participating from remote locations as a part of the quorum. 4, receive, consider, deliberate on, and respond to feedback and submissions in formats, modes, and media, and via platforms, modes, and media enabled by means of information and communications technologies from any person. 5, consider any and all information generated, communicated, and received via formats, platforms, modes, or media as enabled by means of information and communications technologies as forming a part of the record of the committee's meetings. And Mr. President, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion. Sorry.
Thank you, Minister. Questions and answers to questions? Senator Morris.
At the last sitting, the Honourable Minister tabled the answers to some questions in my name, and she also extended the courtesy of me answering the questions at a later stage, and I would like to ask those questions at this moment, if it so pleases you, Mr. President.
1 minute, Senator Morris. Thank you. Senator, I think the Minister wants to respond to you.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Morris. The only point I would make is that I had asked that you could send the questions during the week so that I would be prepared, recognizing that, of course, the subject material does not lie with me, and that would be a way to deal with the matter efficiently. So I actually didn't anticipate that you had any further questions, not having received any before today. That having been said, Mr. President, if Senator Morris wishes to state his questions, then of course, should I be unable to provide that information, I will simply give my undertaking to follow up with the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information to obtain those responses as I had anticipated being the course of action. Thank you, Mr. President.
And if the Minister is unable to respond now, then she can provide with further responses at a later stage. If it so pleases you, Mr. President.
Yes, go ahead, Senator Morris.
Okay. One, Minister, the answers have indicated that approximately 232 schools are accessible to students with disabilities. This is approximately 22% of the total schools in the island. It is also averaging 24 schools that are upgraded annually for the past 4 years for persons with disabilities. And at this rate, it will take another 25 years for the other 700 schools to be upgraded. What plans do the government have to systematically increase the number of schools that are accessible to children with disabilities in order to meet the requirements of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the Disabilities Act that will be coming into effect on February 14th? 2, in response to question 5, the ministry indicated that further support from its partners, some 689 students with disabilities have been provided with assistive devices. Are these students in the schools that are now accessible, or are these students with disabilities in special education institutions? 3, additionally, for this response from the ministry to be meaningful, it would be prudent to find out how many students with disabilities are in the education system. In response to question 6, that deals with the time frame from the government to make all schools accessible for students with disabilities, the answer is unsatisfactory. The ministry has danced around the mulberry bush on the matter, and I've not given a clear indication as to how it intends to treat and deal with the matter. I therefore ask again, what time frame does the ministry have to make all schools accessible for students with disabilities? And Mr. President, I hope you can understand my insistence on this, because for persons with disabilities' lives to be transformed, education is going to play a pivotal role. 5, additionally, when will the new policy for inclusive education be brought to the Parliament? There has been much talk about a special education policy, and this is not what we need now. we need an inclusive education policy to ensure that we meet the requirements of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the Disabilities Act 2014. And it is very important, Minister. I don't want them to carry a policy here that speaks to special education, because the international trend is moving away from the special education nomenclature to one of a more inclusive education system. And so I know that there was a draft of a special education policy and it was being revised, and that revision should include the changing of the nomenclature. And finally, with the list of schools in the appendix, can I publish it on the website of the UWI Center for Disability Studies as accessible schools for persons with disabilities? And can I say to the mother of a child with a disability in Orocabessa, Western St. Mary, that you can send your child who is blind to the Orocabessa High School, because that institution is accessible and inclusive? And the reason for that question, Minister, I mean, installation of ramps is not the sole determinant of an inclusive and accessible education institution. And I would want to know if a child who has a visual impairment in Orocabessa, Western St. Mary, can be included in the Orocabessa High School education system. Thank you. May it please you.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I quite anticipate that Senator Morris recognizes that his questions are all very involved. That is, the answers would be quite involved and are quite specific. They're actually excellent questions, and ones which are deserving of the proper and appropriate attention by the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, who we know is comprised of persons who are very much committed to ensuring that we have a student-centered education system that delivers as broadly as possible to all the needs of our children. And accordingly, we'll pay the due regard to these questions and providing the answers. So I do give my undertaking, Mr. President, to get the questions properly documented from Hansard, although I have noted them here, which will allow me to at least give a signal. The distinction between accessibility broadly applied versus physical accessibility by way of ramp is, is something that I would imagine they would note, and they would want to consider that when recognizing the breadth of the heading under which you would want to publish the information as you have inquired. And certainly the timelines that you have also requested are deserving of consideration and a proper response. So I will pass them on, and I do commit that as soon as they are received, that they will be provided at the earliest sitting of the Senate in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. Motions relating to sittings of the Senate. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the Senate first obtained. Public business. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have a full day today. As noted, there are 3 matters on the agenda. One is we have 2 sets of regulations, the MOCA and the public bodies, the PBMA regulations, and we also are intended to table and take the Corrections Act, and Senator Samuda will be leading the security-related matters, and I will take the PBMA. It is intended that we will start with the corrections bill so that in the event that there are any technical issues that need to be sorted, we could suspend the debate at the committee stage and allow for the technical team to provide us with the appropriate information while allowing us to proceed with the regulations. And that is not anticipating any technical issues. I do hope that we will be able to deal with the matter with some dispatch. But that is intended to be the order of business today, which would, of course, start with Senator Samuda taking the motion for that to suspend standing orders to allow for the bill to be taken today. Before he so does, Mr. President, I would wish to move for suspension of the standing orders to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier, and that is, of course, the matter of the ability of the two joint select committees to sit virtually. If I might ask for suspension of the standing orders for that purpose, Mr. President.
Question is for the suspension of the standing orders to allow the minister to take the motion. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister?
Mr. President, I now ask that the motion be approved.
Question is for the motion to be approved. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister Samuda.
Mr. President, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the second reading of a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Corrections Act and to take it through all its concluding stages.
You have heard the questions. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister, proceed.
Mr. President, I note comments and concerns from the other side related to the temperature. Perhaps the Marshal can have the team look at that so that everyone is comfortable enough for the business of the day. Mr. President, I am pleased to present to the Senate this morning a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Corrections Act 2021. The bill, which seeks to amend the Corrections Act of 1985, as well as the Correctional Institution, Adult Correctional Center Rules 1991, was tabled and passed in the lower house on December 14, 2021, and is now being brought before you in this house for consideration. This amendment, Mr. President, is critical for the integrity of our security architecture, which is constantly under threat by criminals who are robust in their efforts to challenge the authority of the law and prejudice the safety and security of decent law-abiding citizens of this country. Therefore, Mr. President, we also have to be robust in our efforts to curtail them. The rationale for the amendments arose out of a need to address the rapid technological advancements, particularly in the area of communications, which pose a challenge for our correctional institutions. There has been an increase in the use of telecommunication devices by inmates to maintain contact with criminal networks outside of the confines of the correctional institutions. Just to note, I hope that I haven't turned off the AC, but rather adjusted the temperature, or we may have another problem shortly. Yes. Sure. Mr. President, as we expound on the utilization of telecommunication devices by inmates, I want to particularly highlight that through the use of cellular phones and electronic communication devices, incarcerated violence producers, some of whom themselves are gang leaders, have been and are able to directly or indirectly influence criminal gangs and drug activities. They give orders from inside the correctional institutions, perpetuating contract killings and gang feuds. Just recently, Mr. President, there was an incident in which 4 individuals were brutally murdered in Clarendon. And we know and have charged an individual in custody for ordering those murders behind prison walls. Witnesses in criminal cases on occasion may also be threatened, injured, or even killed, perverting the course of justice. Incarcerated individuals can even use cellular phones to plan escapes from custody and gather intelligence on the staff of correctional institutions. These acts exacerbate the difficulties in controlling the level of crime we experience on a national level. Mr. President, the general objectives of the amendment of the Amendment Bill are as follows. The introduction of electronic communication devices and computers as prohibited articles. B, the inclusion of definitions for the terms cache, computer, data, electronic, function, intercept, program, or computer program. C, the introduction of a regime for the confiscation, destruction, and disposal of prohibited articles. D, the increase in fines and custodial sentences for existing provisions under the Corrections Act to make them more of a deterrent. E, the introduction of the following offenses: having access to use of or possession of an electronic communication device or computer in a correctional institution. 2, tampering with any electronic communication device or computer by an inmate. 3, an inmate transmitting or causing to be transmitted without authorization any data using an electronic communication device or computer. An inmate intercepting or causing the interception of any function of an electronic communications device or computer. And 5, any person who uses a computer or electronic communication device to prejudice the safety or security of any person inside or outside of a correctional center, the safe custody or security of an inmate, or the good order or security of a correctional center. 6, unauthorized access to or use or possession of a prohibited article in a correctional institution. In essence, Mr. President, this legislative amendment seeks to give one more tool in the toolbox to make Jamaicans safer. Mr. President, though not a long bill, it is an important one. Allow me to proceed with the clause-by-clause analysis of the amendment bill. Clause 2. Section 2 of the Principal Act is amended by including the terms cache, computer, data, electronic communication device, intercept, program, or computer program. Further, the term prohibited article was amended to include any electronic communication device or computer. These amendments were proposed as they would be encapsulating the technological advancements which have been implemented since the Corrections Act was enacted.
As a nation, that He bless us as a people, and that together we will help to see the rise of our country. We give you thanks through Christ our Lord. Amen. You may be seated. Good morning, everyone. It is my privilege to be your master of ceremonies this morning for this inaugural event. And at this time, I'm going to ask that Ed Barnes, board member of the PBCJ, come to do the welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. And for a while there, I thought I had been elevated without being asked about it. That before we leave, the Prime Minister will tell us about why St. Catherine is not doing as well, and Minister Vaz will tell us why we haven't seen a certain horse on the track anymore. Most Honourable Prime Minister, Minister of Education, Youth and Information, Honourable Favour Williams, Minister of Science, Energy and Technology, Honourable Darrell Vaz, Mr. Justin Morin, Service Fund Board of Management, Mr. Daniel Dawes, Chief Executive Officer, Universal Service Fund, management and staff of the Universal Service Fund, and management and staff of the Public Broadcasting Corporation of Jamaica, welcome to the PBCJ and Studio National, the largest drive-in studio in the English-speaking Caribbean. Today's proceedings is an historic one, as it marks the official handing over of funds from the USF to PBCJ to assist in the technological infrastructure of the first 24/7 educational channel in Latin America and the Caribbean. In fulfilling a very important element of the PBCJ's informing and educating our citizens, the establishment of PBCJ1 was always a part of the strategic plan. Funding, however, was always an inhibition. With the disruption to our school system due to COVID-19 pandemic, it is necessary to continue the education of our children through additional mediums. Of classes via television was viewed as vital in this process. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, the PBCJ, in collaboration with the
conveying